Hey everyone, I'm back with a brand new horror story that's going to send chills down your spine. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now sit back, turn off the lights, and let's begin. I never thought I'd still be driving a beat-up Honda Civic with a Domino's sign on top at 36. When I got the job at 21, it was supposed to be temporary, a filler until I figured my life out. But years have a way of slipping by quietly, one shift at a time, until suddenly temporary becomes your entire existence. My name's Evan Carter, and I've been delivering pizzas for over 15 years in a small town called Maple Ridge, Wisconsin. Population about 12,000 on a good day. It's one of those places where everyone either grew up together or is related somehow. We've got one Walmart, 2 gas stations, and 4 churches. On weekends, the same faces rotate between the bowling alley and the bar across from it. My days are simple. I wake up around noon, take my dog, Riley, a golden mix I adopted from the shelter, for a walk by the lake, grab a coffee at the gas station, and then head to work around 4 p.m. The night shift at Domino's isn't glamorous, but it pays my rent and covers my bills. Plus, I like the quiet, the hum of my car, the smell of melted cheese, the cool air slipping in through the window. Those little things make the world feel okay. I used to have bigger dreams. I went to community college for a couple of years, thinking I'd get into computer repair. But my mom got sick, lung cancer. And after she passed, I just stopped planning ahead. I worked to survive, not to build anything. My dad had already left years before, so it was just me and my brother Tyler, but he moved out to Oregon, chasing work in construction. We talk once every few months. So yeah, it's just me and Riley now. My apartment smells like dog and pizza boxes, but it's home. The night everything changed was a Friday in late November. One of those nights when the cold seeps into your bones, no matter how many layers you wear. We were slammed, high school football playoffs, end of the week parties, families too tired to cook. The store was chaos. "Evan, you got a double on Lincoln Street," shouted Marcus, my manager. He was only 25, but already talked like a grizzled veteran. I grabbed the ticket. 2 stops, both prepaid. 1 large pepperoni and a 2-liter of Sprite for the first address, then a large sausage and mushroom at 1439 Lincoln Street. Lincoln Street wasn't far, but it had a reputation. A lot of old homes, some boarded up, some halfway remodeled, others with sagging porches and flickering porch lights. Not dangerous exactly, just the kind of place where people kept to themselves and didn't call the cops unless they had to. By the time I left the store, it was close to 10:45 p.m. The streets were quiet. My headlights cut through patches of fog drifting off the river. I remember thinking how still everything looked, like the world was holding its breath. The first delivery went smooth. A middle-aged woman, big smile, tipped $5 and told me to stay warm. It was the kind of small kindness that reminded me why I didn't hate this job. Then came 1439 Lincoln Street. The house sat on a corner lot, the paint peeling, porch light flickering weakly. A dented blue van was parked halfway on the curb. The driveway was lined with patches of frost that glittered in the light from my car. I grabbed the insulated bag, the Coke bottle, and stepped out. My breath came out in pale clouds. I could hear a faint humming. Maybe a generator, maybe just wind through the gutters. When I reached the porch, I knocked. Nothing. I waited, knocked again, louder. After a few seconds, the door creaked open just an inch. A man's voice, low, quiet, he spoke from behind it. "Yeah?" "Domino's delivery," I said, holding up the bag. "Large sausage and mushroom?" The door opened wider. The guy was tall, maybe 6'2", and thin. His hoodie was pulled tight around his face, but I could see pale skin, stubble along his jaw. His eyes looked hollow. "Yeah," he said slowly. "That's mine." He reached out, and when he took the pizza, his hand brushed mine. It was ice cold. "That'll do it," I said, trying to sound casual. "You paid online, so..." Before I could finish, I noticed movement behind him. A shadow in the hallway. Another person. Then another. Something in my gut twisted. "Hey man," I said, stepping back slightly. "You good?" The guy didn't answer. He just stared at me for a few seconds, then smiled. Not a friendly smile, a slow, crooked one that didn't reach his eyes. "You from the Main Street store?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" His voice dropped lower. "You guys deliver late, huh?" I forced a small laugh. "Yeah, that's kind of the job." Then I saw it, the glint of metal in his right hand. Knife. "Hey, I don't want any trouble," I said quickly. "Then don't move." The door opened fully, and two more figures stepped out from behind him. Both in dark hoodies, both with their faces hidden. One of them closed the door behind them, shutting out what little light was inside. My heart started hammering. "Look, man, take the pizza, the Coke, whatever you want. I'll just go." The tall guy shook his head slowly. "You're not going anywhere yet." Then everything happened too fast. The smaller one lunged first, knife flashing in the dim porch light. Pain exploded in my side. I stumbled backward, clutching my ribs. The other one grabbed my jacket, yanking me forward again. "Wallet!" he barked. I fumbled it out with shaking hands, dropped it onto the porch. My phone followed, my vision blurred from pain and cold. "Check the car," the tall one said. The third guy sprinted toward my Honda, yanked open the driver's door. I heard him rummaging inside, papers scattering. When he came back, he shook his head. "Nothing in there." "Then finish it," the tall man muttered. I didn't even have time to beg. The second stab came higher, chest near my shoulder. The world spun. My knees hit the wood. My breath came in wet, shallow gasps. They moved fast, like they'd done this before. 3 stabs, 4, maybe more. Then, silence. I remember the crunch of boots on gravel, the engine of the van sputtering to life, the sound fading into the distance. For a while, all I could hear was my heartbeat. Loud, uneven. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't listen. My flashlight had rolled down the porch steps, casting a thin beam across the frost. Crawling felt impossible, but somehow I did it, inch by inch, until I reached my car. I pressed the key fob, the headlights flashed, and I half fell into the driver's seat. The drive to Maple Ridge General was a blur of pain and adrenaline. I remember running a red light, hearing tires screech, someone shouting. Then, darkness. When I opened my eyes again, it was to the sterile hum of hospital lights, tubes, monitors, the steady beep of a heart rate I didn't recognize as mine. A nurse noticed I was awake and called for the doctor. They said I was lucky. No major arteries, but 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and deep lacerations. The doctor said if I'd passed out a mile sooner, I'd be gone. The cops came later. Detective Ramirez, kind eyes, tired voice, and took my statement. He asked if I saw their faces, the van's plates, anything. I didn't. The porch light flickered out halfway through the attack. They promised they'd look into it, but I could hear the doubt in his tone. People like me, small-town nobodies delivering pizzas. We don't make headline news. It's been 11 days since I got home. Riley sleeps at my feet every night, whimpering whenever I shift in bed. My car is still stained in the seat where I bled. Every time I see that dark patch, I feel the knife again. I quit Domino's 2 days after getting home. Marcus called, told me I had a job if I ever wanted it back. I thanked him, told him I needed time. But the truth is, I can't go back. Not because of fear, though yeah, that's part of it, but because something inside me changed that night. The world doesn't feel small and predictable anymore. Every knock on a door feels like a gamble. Every pair of headlights in the mirror feels like a threat. Sometimes I still drive at night just to see the empty streets again, to remind myself they're real. I pass by Lincoln Street, and I always look at that house. The one with the peeling paint and the flickering light. It's empty now. For sale sign out front. No van, no sound. Just silence. But a few nights ago, around midnight, I swear I saw someone standing in the window. Just a shape, still, watching. I blinked and it was gone. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe not. All I know is this. The next time I hear someone knock after dark, I'm not answering. Story 2, I never planned to still be delivering pizzas at 37. When I started back in my early 20s, it was supposed to be a stopgap. A way to make rent, while I figured out what I wanted to do. But life has a funny way of quietly hardening into routines until one day you realize you've been in the same place for years. And honestly, I never saw a reason to change. I worked nights at a Domino's in the middle of Rockford, Illinois. Not a terrible place, but not one you dream about either. The kind of city where everyone's just trying to make it through another week. I rent a one-bedroom apartment on the west side, drive an old Honda Civic with 260,000 miles on it, and spend most nights folding boxes, running deliveries, and listening to tired people complain about cold cheese or missing ranch cups. My name's Eli Grant, and this is the story that ruined my appetite for pizza forever. The thing about delivery work is that it makes you invisible. People see the uniform, the hat, the insulated bag, but not the person wearing it. You knock, smile, hand them their order, and you're gone. No one remembers you unless something goes wrong. I used to tell myself I liked that anonymity. After my divorce, it made life easier. My ex-wife, Marissa, used to say I didn't know how to let people in. Maybe she was right. After she left, I stopped trying. Work, sleep, repeat. That was my life. The only person who ever tried to pull me out of that rut was my manager, Tom Russo. He was in his 50s, heavy-set but quick on his feet, always cracking jokes that somehow kept the place from feeling like hell. He'd been managing that Domino's for almost 2 decades, and you could tell he actually cared. Not about the company, but about the people working there. Then there was Devin, the shift lead. 22, mouthy, thought he knew everything about everything. And Marcy, the night prep cook, mid-30s, single mom, always had country music playing on her phone. We weren't close, but there's something about night shifts that builds quiet bonds. You don't have to like each other, but you rely on each other. That's why the night it all started, I noticed right away that something was off. It was early November, cold enough that your breath hung in the air. We were short-staffed that night. 2 drivers had called in sick, and Tom was covering the oven station himself. Around 9:30, I came back from a run and saw him standing by the sink, staring at his hands. His gloves were off and his fingertips were red. "You all right?" I asked, tossing my keys on the counter. He blinked and looked up at me like he'd forgotten I was there. "Yeah, just cut myself earlier." "Nothing major." I noticed a small smear of blood on his apron. "You should probably bandage that up," I said. He gave a half smile. Yeah, I will." Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. We'd all had long nights before. At around 10:15, we got a call-in order from a number the caller ID didn't recognize. A blocked number, which always means trouble. Tom answered. "Domino's, this is Tom speaking." I could hear static on the other end. Then a man's voice, low and shaky. "Is it safe to eat from there?" Tom frowned. "Excuse me?" "Your store," the man said. "Is it safe to eat from there?" Tom chuckled uncomfortably. "Sir, all our food is prepared fresh. Tell your delivery guy to stop bringing it to my house." Before Tom could respond, the line went dead. Devin laughed from the make line. "Probably some stoned kid screwing around." Tom didn't laugh. He just stared at the phone for a few seconds before setting it down. Around midnight, I took a delivery out to the south side, an old duplex near the river. No porch light, no visible house number. When I got out of the car, I could smell something faint in the air. Not garbage, not rot exactly, but something meaty and sour. I rang the doorbell twice before a man answered. He looked to be in his 40s, thin, with sunken eyes and a faded army jacket. He didn't take the pizza right away. Instead, he peered past me, looking toward my car, then at the logo on my jacket. "You work at the Rockford Domino's?" he asked. "Yeah," I said cautiously. His eyes darted toward the pizza box in my hand. "Don't eat it." "Not from there," I laughed nervously. "All right, can I get your signature?" He shook his head. "They're putting something in it." "It's not safe, sir. Not safe," he snapped, voice trembling now. "I've been watching. I saw what they do back there." I stepped back. "Okay, I'm just gonna..." He slammed the door in my face. When I got back to the store, I told Tom about it. He rubbed his temples. "Yeah, that guy's called before. Real head case. Says he worked for the health department. Don't let it get to you." Still, something about the way the man's voice cracked when he said not safe stuck with me. 2 nights later, I came in early. The first thing I noticed was the smell, not the usual mix of dough, sauce, and grease. Something else, something metallic. Marcy was at the sink, scrubbing a cutting board. Her hands were shaking. "You okay?" I asked. She jumped a little. "Oh, hey." "Yeah, just trying to get this cleaned up. Someone made a mess back here." She stepped aside and I saw it. Faint streaks of red smeared along the counter. "Did someone cut themselves again?" "Tom did," she said quietly. "Last night. He said it was an accident." There was that same pause, the same look she gave me that Tom had 2 nights earlier. Like she wanted to say more but couldn't. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The phone call, the weird smell, Tom's bandaged hand. The breaking point came on a Sunday. It was a slow night, just me, Tom, and Devin closing. Around 11, a storm rolled in, and the power flickered. Tom told me to check the back freezer to make sure the door was sealed tight. The freezer was a long, walk-in unit behind the prep room. When I opened the door, the cold air hit me like a wall. My flashlight beam cut through the frost. Stacks of boxes lined the walls. Bags of pepperoni, sausage, and chicken. Everything looked normal until I noticed one box on the floor that wasn't sealed. I crouched down. The label said local supplier, mixed meat. But inside, wrapped in clear plastic, was something that looked too pale, too smooth. I leaned closer and realized it had fingers. I dropped the flashlight. The sound echoed in the freezer, and the beam rolled across the floor, landing on something else, a shoe, a small red Converse sneaker. I stumbled backward, nearly slipping on the ice, and ran out of the freezer. "Tom!" I shouted. He was standing by the dough table watching me. His expression was calm, too calm. "Find something, Eli?" he asked softly. My throat went dry. "What the hell is in there?" He wiped his hands on a towel, stepping closer. "You ever wonder why we don't waste much meat here? Why the special blend always tastes a little different?" "Tom, what the hell are you talking about?" He smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's sustainable. Local. Nothing goes to waste." I backed toward the door. "You're insane." "Don't go running off," he said, his voice low now. "You're part of this now." I turned and bolted. Devin was gone, his car still outside, but no sign of him in the kitchen. I didn't look back. I just kept running until I hit the parking lot, fumbling with my keys, slipping on the wet asphalt until I managed to get the Civic started. I didn't go home that night. I drove straight to the police station. They didn't believe me at first, said I sounded hysterical. But when they sent a unit to check the freezer, they found it. Not just the box, but a dozen more, buried behind crates of dough. Inside, bones, organs, and human remains. Tom was arrested that night. The news said he'd been part of some kind of underground meat recycling operation tied to missing people across the state. They never found Devin. They never confirmed how long Tom had been doing it. Marcy quit and moved out of town. The store shut down within a week. It's been 3 years since then. I still live in Rockford, but I don't work food service anymore. Can't stand the smell. I got a job driving for a courier company instead. Packages don't scream, or bleed, or stare back at you when you open a box. Sometimes, though, when I pass a Domino's sign at night, that same nausea creeps up. That smell. Metallic, warm, wrong. I still remember Tom's words. "You're part of this now." And in a way, he was right. Because no matter how many miles I drive, or how many times I tell myself it's over, I still see that box when I close my eyes. And I still hear that man's voice on the phone. The one who tried to warn us. "Is it safe to eat from there?" I should have said no. Story 3. I never thought I'd still be working at a Domino's in my 30s. When I took the job, I told myself it was temporary, just a way to get by after things went south with my last construction gig. The plan was simple. Work a few months, save up, and move somewhere cheaper. But plans have a way of dying quietly, especially when life keeps kicking you in the same spot. I'd moved to Brookline, Indiana, about 2 years ago after my marriage fell apart. My wife Ellie and I split right after her brother died in a car wreck. I guess grief doesn't always bring people closer. It tore us apart instead. She moved to Chicago and I stayed behind. The town wasn't much. 2 gas stations, a Dollar General, a few restaurants, and a Domino's tucked between a laundromat and a vape shop. That's where I ended up. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was easy. You fall into a rhythm, prep dough, make runs, clean up, repeat. Most nights it was just me, our manager Nicole, and one or two other drivers. We'd joke around, blast music, and talk about whatever nonsense helped the hours pass. It was the kind of mindless, comfortable grind that lets you drift without thinking too hard about what your life's become. That was before Ray showed up. It was early March, still cold enough that the rain froze into sleet on the windshield. Nicole had hired a new driver to help cover nights. His name was Raymond Ellis. He showed up wearing a faded army jacket and steel-toed boots, holding his Domino's cap like it was something he didn't want to wear. "Ray, right?" Nicole said when he walked in. He nodded once. "Yeah." His voice was deep, gravelly, like someone who'd smoked for decades. "Cool," she smiled. "Ethan, show him how we do the runs. He'll ride along for the first couple deliveries." I stuck out my hand. "Hey, man." "Ethan." He just gave a small nod and said, "Ray." No handshake, no smile. His eyes were pale blue, almost gray, and they didn't blink much. Something about the way he looked at me made me feel like I was being sized up. The first couple weeks were normal enough. Ray wasn't talkative, but he did his job. He drove this old green Chevy that rattled like it was held together by prayers and duct tape. He never joined our usual backroom banter, never laughed at anything. He just watched, always quiet, always lingering near the security monitor by the soda fridge. I remember one night around closing, I came in from a run and found him standing just a foot from the TV feed. 4 black and white squares showing the register, the prep line, the lobby, and the hallway that led to the break room. He wasn't just glancing, he was studying it, leaning in, eyes locked, like he was memorizing it frame by frame. "Hey," I said, grabbing my jacket. "You good, man?" He blinked slowly, turned toward me, then said, "Just checking the blind spots." "Blind spots?" He pointed at the top corner of the screen. "Camera by the back door doesn't cover the corner by the ice machine. Someone could come in that way." I forced a laugh. "Yeah, well, I doubt anyone's breaking into Domino's for dough balls." He didn't laugh, just turned back to the monitor. That should have been my first red flag. A few nights later, we got hit with one of those long dead shifts. Rain pouring, phones barely ringing. It was just me, Nicole, and Ray. Around 10 p.m., a young couple came in with 2 kids. The kids, little boys, maybe 6 and 8, ran to the window table and started fogging up the glass with their breath, drawing faces in the condensation. I looked over and saw Ray standing by the prep station, his hands resting on the counter, eyes fixed on those kids. He didn't move, didn't blink. "Hey, Ray," I called, trying to sound casual. "Can you grab another bag of mozzarella from the walk-in?" No reaction. "Ray," I said again, louder. His head jerked slightly, like he'd just woken up. Without saying a word, he turned and walked to the back. When the family left, Nicole asked, "What was that about?" I shrugged. "No idea. Dude's off, though." She sighed. "Yeah, he's quiet, but he works hard. Probably just awkward." I wanted to believe that. The next week, things got stranger. Kara, our assistant manager, was working the register one night. Around 9:30, she went to the back to grab her phone from her locker. I was cutting boxes when I saw Ray slip down the hallway behind her. He moved weird, shoulders hunched, steps soft, like he didn't want anyone to notice. I waited a few seconds, then followed. The break room was small, 6 lockers, a table, a fridge that hummed too loud. Kara's purse was sitting open on the table. Ray stood next to it, his hand hovering just above the opening. "What are you doing?" I said, sharper than I meant to. He froze, didn't turn around. "Ray, I asked you a question." He slowly turned, expression blank. "Looking for my phone." I looked down. His phone was clipped to his belt. "Your phone's right there." He looked at it, then at me, as if just realizing it. "Right." Must have forgotten. He brushed past me and left the room. Kara came back a minute later. I told her what happened. She checked her purse. Wallet unzipped, nothing missing. Still, she went straight to Nicole. Nicole just sighed. "Okay, I'll talk to him. He's weird, yeah, but I don't think he's dangerous." That word, dangerous, stuck with me. A few nights later, I got proof that changed everything. Ray had left on a delivery around 9:15. I knew the run would take at least 20 minutes, so I used the chance to pull up the security feed on the office computer. The footage from the night before showed Ray standing outside the employee bathroom door. The light inside was on. The door was slightly open. Inside was Kara, fixing her hair in the mirror. Ray just stood there, 2 feet from the doorway, watching. No sound, no movement, just breathing. For 2 full minutes. I felt my skin crawl. When Ray came back that night, I couldn't look at him the same way. He caught me staring once and said, "Something on your mind?" I forced a smile. "Nope, just tired." But inside, my heart was pounding. 2 nights later, it escalated. It was a Tuesday. Kara was closing with me, Ray and Nicole. Around 10:10, I stepped outside to take a call from my landlord. When I came back in, Kara was on the phone taking an order, and Nicole was counting the drawer. Ray wasn't anywhere in sight. I heard a faint sound, metal scraping, coming from the break room. Quietly, I walked down the hall and pushed the door open. Ray was standing at Kara's locker. The door was open, and his hands were inside. "What the hell are you doing?" I snapped. He spun around, eyes wide. Nothing. I was just what?" He looked cornered. His voice cracked. "Looking for my apron. Thought I left it. There's a stack of aprons by the oven, you liar. Get out." For a second, I thought he might lunge at me. His eyes flicked from my face to the door, like he was calculating something. Then he muttered something under his breath, grabbed his jacket, and stormed out. Nicole locked the door behind him. The next morning, I brought her the camera footage, him at Kara's locker, in the hallway video of him watching her in the bathroom. This time, she didn't hesitate. She called the regional manager and fired him on the spot. The police came later that afternoon. They said since nothing was stolen and no one was touched, there wasn't much they could do. That didn't sit right with me. That night, long after close, I stayed behind. Everyone had gone home, but I wanted to check something. The DVR only stored 2 weeks' worth of footage before overwriting itself, so I started digging backward, night by night. Most of it was boring: deliveries, mop buckets, employees messing around. Then at 2:17 a.m. one night, long after we'd closed, I saw movement. The back door opened. Ray stepped inside. He had a key. He walked straight to the break room, opened Kara's locker, pulled out her uniform shirt, and held it to his face. For a full minute, just breathing. Then he folded it, put it back, and left. I felt sick. I called Nicole right then and told her to change the locks. She did. For a while, things went back to normal. We even joked about it, called him Creepy Ray, but jokes didn't stop the fear from sticking around. Every night after close, when I mopped the floor alone, I'd catch myself glancing at the back door, half expecting to see him there. A few weeks later, Nicole got a call from corporate asking about missing supplies, boxes of cheese, sauce packs, and cleaning chemicals unaccounted for. The deliveries had all been signed by the manager on duty, Ray. He'd been ordering extra before he was fired. That night, I walked out to my car after close and found a note tucked under my wiper blade. Just a torn piece of cardboard with 3 words written in shaky ink: "You should have stayed quiet." My chest went cold. I called Nicole, told her what I found. She said to take it to the police, but when they came, the officer just shrugged. Could be a prank. Probably nothing, but it wasn't nothing. The next week, we started hearing noises at night, small things. A bump from the back alley, a light flicker on the monitor, motion alerts that showed nothing. One night around 1 a.m., after we closed and cleaned up, Nicole and I were finishing paperwork when the door chime rang. We both froze. The doors were locked. Nicole looked at me. "Did you?" "No." We stepped out front. No one there. Just the sound of the walk-in humming. Then the motion alert went off again. Camera 4, the back hallway. Nicole's hand was trembling as she brought up the feed. The screen flickered, static rolling across it. And then we saw him, Ray, standing halfway down the hall, staring directly at the camera. His face was pale, his eyes wide. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Nicole whispered, "That's live, right?" I nodded. I grabbed the phone to call 911, but the feed cut to black. We locked ourselves in the office until the cops showed up. They searched the place top to bottom. No Ray, no forced entry, nothing. But when they checked the back door, the lock was broken from the inside. They never found him. A month later, I quit. Moved to a different town, took a job delivering for Papa John's in Lafayette. But sometimes late at night, when I'm parked in some dark driveway, waiting for a customer to answer, I'll catch movement in my mirrors, a shape that's there 1 second, gone the next. And every now and then, I still get that same pit in my stomach when the store gets quiet and I glance at the security feed. Because in that grainy black and white corner of the screen, I swear I still see his face, just for a second, staring back. Story 4. I never planned on staying at Clearwater Domino's for more than a summer. Back then, I was just looking for a stopgap, a way to pay off a semester's worth of student loans after I dropped out of Ohio State. I told myself it would be 3 months, maybe 4. Just enough to get some breathing room, then I'd move on. But then rent went up, my car needed repairs, and before I knew it, I'd been there almost 2 years. It's funny how life traps you without making a sound. I worked the night shift mostly, 4 p.m. to midnight, sometimes later if deliveries piled up. Clearwater, Indiana isn't a big town, but our Domino's sat right on Route 16, a stretch of road that ran between the interstate and a bunch of tired apartment complexes. We got every kind of customer, truckers, high school kids, the late-night drunks. But business slowed down after 10. That's when the place went quiet, and you started to notice things you normally wouldn't. The hum of the walk-in fridge, the flicker in the corner light that no one bothered fixing, the faint smell of burnt dough no matter how many times you wiped the oven clean. And Kevin. I'll never forget him. When I first started, there were 4 of us who rotated shifts. Me, the manager Brian, a quiet guy named Eddie who handled deliveries, and Kevin, the closing driver. Kevin was maybe 25, with thinning blonde hair, pale skin, and a nervous laugh that never matched the situation. He was one of those people who talked like silence physically hurt him, always asking questions that went just a little too far. At first, I chalked it up to social awkwardness. I've known plenty of people like that. Lonely, weird, but mostly harmless. He'd hover near the prep table when I was making dough, his voice soft but constant. "So, you live around here?" "Yeah," I'd mumble, keeping my eyes on the flour. "You got roommates or something?" "No, just me." He'd grin, this tight, twitchy smile. "That's cool. I like being alone too." I didn't respond. The next night he asked what apartment complex I lived in, then which building, then what floor. I remember glancing up and saying flatly, "Why?" He laughed. "Just curious, trying to see if we're neighbors or something." We weren't. I started making a habit of leaving right at closing, never staying a minute longer than I had to. I even changed my route home a few times, just in case. The first time things really felt wrong was that night in November when Kevin came in early. I was in the back, loading the dough tray when I heard the bell on the door. It wasn't supposed to open. We weren't open yet. But when I came out, there he was, standing in the middle of the store, no uniform, just staring at the menu board like he'd never seen it before. "Hey," I said cautiously, "we're not open yet." He turned, startled. "Oh, yeah, I know, I just forgot something last night." "Okay," I said slowly. "What did you forget?" He didn't answer right away, just smiled and brushed his hand along the counter. "You always smell like vanilla, you know that?" I froze. "Excuse me?" He tilted his head. "Your perfume, or lotion, or whatever. It's nice." I stepped back. "Don't." Before it could get worse, Brian came out from the office. "Kevin, outside." Now Kevin didn't argue. He just smiled at me again, wide and stiff, and walked out. That was the first time Brian said anything about him. After Kevin left, he sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, don't take it personal. Kid's got issues. Doesn't mean anything by it." "Then maybe he shouldn't be here at midnight with my name on his lips," I snapped. Brian just shrugged. "I'll talk to him." He didn't. By December, it got harder to ignore. Kevin started timing his deliveries so he'd get back right when I was clocking out. He'd stand by the register waiting. "You heading home?" he'd ask. "Yep." "You want company?" No. You sure? I got nothing else going on. Yeah, I'm sure he'd just smile, slow and deliberate. You always say that. I told Brian again, but his response was the same. He's harmless. You just have to set boundaries. The thing about men like Kevin is they don't hear boundaries. They just treat them like puzzles. Like if they ask enough times, the answer will change. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, everything finally broke. It had been snowing since morning, the kind that came down thick and steady. Roads were empty, phones were dead, and the store was quiet except for the buzz of the oven. It was just me and Kevin that night. Brian had left early for a date around 10:30. A woman called in for a pickup, large pepperoni, extra cheese, and breadsticks. I made the order, boxed it, and set it on the warmer. 10 minutes passed. No one came. I was wiping down the counter when Kevin leaned over. You know, it's a shame. You shouldn't be working tonight. Why's that? I said flatly. He smiled. Because someone like you should have a man buying her dinner, not making it. I ignored him. He laughed softly. Don't pretend you don't like the attention. I slammed the rag down. You need to stop. That grin faded, replaced with something colder. You think you're better than me? I think I'm tired, I said, walking toward the back. That's when I heard him say it, low and hard. I know where you live. I froze. What? He didn't repeat it, just smiled again and turned away, humming as he checked the oven timer. I didn't say another word to him. When midnight hit, I grabbed my coat and keys and headed for the door. Snow had piled high around the cars, turning the lot into a blur of white. I walked fast, not looking back. When I got home, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another buzz, another call, then a text. Forgot your pizza. I hadn't ordered one. The next morning, I found a Domino's box on my doorstep. Inside wasn't pizza. It was just cheese, melted, greasy, clumped together. And underneath, black mold. The smell hit like rot. I gagged and dropped it on the porch. That's when I saw it, written on the inside of the lid, in Sharpie. You'll be sorry. I went straight to Brian. He looked shaken when I showed him the photo. Jesus Christ, he muttered. I'll take care of it. Take care of it? He's threatening me. I said I'll handle it. He never explained what that meant, and I didn't see Kevin for 2 days after that. I almost let myself believe it was over. Then Saturday night came. We were closing late, around 1 a.m. I was mopping the front floor while Brian counted the drawer in the office. The parking lot lights flickered outside. Snow had melted into gray slush. That's when I saw the shape through the front glass. A man, standing still in the middle of the lot. At first, I thought it was a reflection. Then he moved. Slow, deliberate, just far enough into the light that I saw his face. Kevin. His hair was slicked flat, his hoodie zipped up to his chin. He wasn't wearing a coat. He smiled, then lifted something in his hand. A pizza box. I dropped the mop. Brian, I shouted. By the time he came out, Kevin was gone. We went outside, but there was nothing. Just the box sitting on the hood of my car. I didn't want to open it, but Brian did. Inside was another mess of mold and cheese. No note this time, just something scratched into the cardboard with a knife. H.I. Brian went pale. I'll call corporate, he said quietly. I called the police. They showed up an hour later, took a report, and left. We'll keep an eye out, one of them said. They didn't. I quit 2 days later. I thought that would be the end. But for the next month, I kept seeing him. At the gas station, by the laundromat. Once, standing across from my apartment at midnight, half hidden behind a stop sign. I called the cops again. They told me without direct contact, there wasn't much they could do. So I stopped sleeping near the windows. I kept my lights off after dark. A few weeks later, Domino's shut down. I heard through the grapevine that health inspectors found mold in the walk-in fridge. And something else, something they wouldn't talk about. All I know is that when I drove by the building a few days later, the windows were covered in brown paper, and the parking lot lights were gone. But sometimes when I work late at my new job and pull into my apartment lot, I catch a glimpse of movement across the street, just outside the reach of the light. Someone standing still, watching, and every so often I find something on my doorstep, a pizza box. empty. Story 5. I never planned on staying at Domino's longer than a few months. When I started, I told myself it was temporary, just a stopgap while I figured things out. But months have a way of melting into years when you're broke and trying to survive. My name's Evan Marshall, I'm 26, and I've been working nights at Domino's on Birch Avenue, right off Route 12 in Ashburn, Illinois, for almost a year now. I used to like the quiet that came with the late shift. There's something about working when everyone else is asleep, the streets empty, the air cold and still, that feels oddly peaceful. You move differently, think differently. Sometimes it almost feels like you're invisible, and I needed that invisibility. Before Domino's, my life was a string of jobs that went nowhere. Dishwasher at a Chinese buffet, night janitor at a middle school, stalker at Target for 4 months before they cut hours. It's not that I didn't try, I just never seemed to fit anywhere. My dad used to say I had a drifter's spirit. Maybe he was right. He died 3 years ago, heart attack at 56. My mom followed 6 months later. After that, it was just me and my younger sister Claire, though she moved down to Missouri last fall for nursing school. So now it's just me. A 1-bedroom apartment, a dying Honda Civic, and the night shift at Domino's. The store sits on the edge of town, tucked between a laundromat and a car wash that hasn't worked properly since before I was hired. The fluorescent sign flickers sometimes, making the D in Domino's blink out so it just reads "DOMINO'S Kevin." My manager says he'll get it fixed next week. He's been saying that since April. That night, the night it happened, was a Thursday in late February. It was snowing lightly, just enough to dust the pavement and make everything look washed out under the streetlights. We were short-staffed, like usual. Josh, our delivery driver, had gone home early after his kid got sick. That left me and Maya, a college sophomore who worked evenings to help pay tuition. Maya was quiet, always polite, always on her phone between orders. The rush had ended around 10:45. By 11:30, the ovens were humming softly, the smell of baked dough and pepperoni hanging in the air. I liked that part of the night, the cleanup, the rhythm of wiping counters, folding boxes, tossing out the trash. Around 11:50, the front door chimed. I glanced up from the prep table. A guy walked in, maybe mid-30s, tall, with long blonde hair that brushed his shoulders. He wore a faded army green jacket over a hoodie and jeans that looked damp from the snow. Nothing unusual at first, but the way he stopped just inside the door made my skin crawl. He didn't move toward the counter, didn't even glance at the menu. He just stood there, looking straight at me. Maya turned, adjusting her headset. "Hey, we're still open for another 10 minutes, she said, her voice friendly but cautious. The man didn't respond. His eyes flicked to her briefly, then came back to me. Something in that look, still unblinking, direct, made my stomach tighten. "You okay, sir?" I asked. He smiled, slow and crooked. "Yeah," he said softly. "Just making sure I'm in the right place." "The right place for what?" Maya asked, glancing between us. He didn't answer her. Instead, he tilted his head slightly like he was studying me. "You've been here a while, huh?" I frowned. "Do I know you?" He shook his head, that faint smile still hovering. "Not yet." I forced a small laugh. "Well, if you're here to order, the menu's right above." He interrupted me. "You drive that silver Civic out back?" My heart skipped. I did. It was parked behind the store near the dumpster, but there was no way he could have seen that from the front. I hesitated. "Why?" He shrugged lightly. "Just curious." Maya shot me a look. The kind of look that says, "What the hell is this guy's deal?" I didn't answer. The man nodded toward the window. "You might want to check on it. Looks like someone was messing around near the dumpster." I stepped closer to the front glass. From where I stood, I couldn't see my car. The alley behind the store was hidden from view. I turned back to him. "Who?" He didn't answer, just smiled again. "Might be nothing." Then, just as quietly as he'd arrived, he turned and walked out. The door chimed. Snow blew in, then the night swallowed him up. For a few seconds, the store was silent, except for the low hum of the cooler. "That was creepy," Maya muttered. "Yeah." "You think he was serious? About someone being out there?" I wanted to say no, that he was just another weirdo, but something about the way he said it stuck with me. "I'll check," I said finally. I grabbed the back door key, pulling on my jacket. The air outside hit me like ice. Sharp, biting. The alley was empty, except for the overflowing dumpster and a few piles of old snow pushed up against the fence. My car sat about 10 feet away, dusted in white. Everything looked normal. I was about to head back in when I noticed something. The dumpster lid was open. It shouldn't have been. I'd closed it earlier after tossing the last of the trash. I stepped closer, shining my phone's flashlight inside. Just pizza boxes, bags of dough scraps, empty sauce tubs. Then a noise, a faint, hollow thud from inside the dumpster. I froze. Another thud, softer this time, like something shifting. "Maya?" I called, half expecting her to be messing with me. No response. I swallowed hard and took a step back. That's when I noticed movement in the reflection of my car's window. Something behind me. I spun around. The man was standing at the corner of the building, half in shadow. "Jesus!" I stepped back, heart pounding. "What the hell are you doing?" He didn't move closer. His voice came low, almost calm. "Told you someone was out here. What do you want?" He smiled faintly. "Help me with something?" "No," I said, my voice cracking. "You need to leave." He tilted his head. "Not until you look." "What?" He pointed toward the dumpster. "Inside." I shook my head. "I'm not doing that." Something in his expression shifted. Not anger, but disappointment. "You should," he said softly. "Before they do." "They who?" He didn't answer. From the darkness behind him, I heard footsteps. More than one. 4 silhouettes emerged from behind the car wash. Hooded figures, their faces hidden. They moved in sync, slow and deliberate, boots crunching on the thin layer of snow. "Hey!" I shouted, backing toward the door. "We're calling the cops!" Maya's voice echoed faintly from inside. "Evan? What's going on?" I tried the handle, locked. My hands fumbled with the keyring, cold and trembling. By the time I got it in, the figures were closer. The blonde man didn't move with them. He stayed still, watching, hands in his hoodie pocket. The door finally clicked open. I shoved inside, slamming it behind me and locking it again. "What happened?" Maya's eyes were wide. "Call 911, I said, breathless. "Now!" She grabbed the phone, hands shaking as she dialed. I went to the window, heart pounding. The parking lot looked empty. The van, a white one, dented, filthy, sat half a block down under a flickering streetlight. I hadn't noticed it before. "They're gone," I whispered. "Who's gone?" "Those guys. They were out there. They..." Headlights flared suddenly in the lot, flooding the front of the store with white light. The van's engine rumbled to life. Then it rolled forward, slowly, straight toward the building. "Get back!" I yelled, grabbing Maya's arm. The van stopped just short of the window. For a few seconds, the lights stayed on, blindingly bright. Then they clicked off. Silence. Through the glare-streaked glass, I could see the man's silhouette in the driver's seat. Still, watching. Police sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The van's brake lights flashed once, twice. Then it backed up, turned, and disappeared down Birch Avenue. When the cops arrived 10 minutes later, there was no sign of it. No footprints in the snow except mine. They took our statements, checked the cameras, and left, promising to keep an eye out. But when Kevin came in the next morning, the security footage from that hour was gone, corrupted. The system had malfunctioned, the tech guy said. I quit 2 days later. Now every time I close my eyes, I see that man's face, calm, almost polite, and hear his voice. "You should look before they do." I still don't know what he meant, but sometimes when I drive past that old Domino's building on my way to my new job, I see a white van parked in the same spot by the dumpster. Engine off, headlights dark, and sometimes I swear I can see someone standing behind the glass, watching, waiting.